At 9:17 a.m. local time, January 15th, in Russia's Komi Republic, a routine police training drill collapsed into chaos. The location was a closed training hall under renovation. The temperature outside sat below -15 degrees Celsius. Inside, the air was thick with paint fumes, solvents, and dust. 20 young police cadets stood in formation. Most were in their early 20s. One was only 19. The exercise was supposed to simulate riot control. Shields, batons, crowd pressure. Instead, it turned into a nightmare in less than 2 seconds. A stun grenade was activated indoors. Flames flashed instantly. Combustible materials ignited. The blast tore through the hall. Sirens followed. Screams echoed. Emergency services arrived too late to prevent catastrophic injuries. 20 officers were hospitalized. One young officer did not survive. But this was not an isolated accident. It was a symptom. Because while the Kremlin projects strength from Red Square, Russia's internal security system is quietly hollowing out. According to official data from late 2025, more than 172,000 police positions across Russia remain unfilled. In Moscow alone, roughly 3 out of 4 district officer posts stand vacant. Phones ring, no one answers. Calls go unanswered for hours. And as law enforcement thins out, something else moves in. Convicts once released for frontline service are returning home. Weapons leak back from the battlefield. Organized crime adapts faster than the state. In December, a police vehicle was destroyed in southern Moscow. Days later, a senior military officer was targeted in the capital. Investigators spoke carefully. The public noticed the pattern. This was no longer about Ukraine. This was about control at home. Russia is facing a security vacuum, and then the unthinkable happened. That vacuum began to spread, street by street, toward the heart of Moscow itself. Russia has long marketed itself as a fortress state, a country built on surveillance, internal controls, and layers of security institutions. The Ministry of Internal Affairs, the National Guard, the FSB. On paper, the architecture looks overwhelming. In practice, it is stretched thin. The trigger for the current breakdown did not start in Komi. It started in February 2022, when Moscow committed hundreds of thousands of personnel, billions of dollars, and vast political capital to a full-scale war in Ukraine. Since then, the balance between external war and internal order has steadily eroded. According to reporting by Reuters and the BBC, through 2024 and 2025, Russia's labor market has been distorted by 3 forces at once. First, mass mobilization pulled working-age men into uniform. Second, defense industries absorbed skilled labor with salaries far exceeding civilian public service. Third, inflation outpaced state sector wages, including police pay. A district police officer in a regional city earns the equivalent of roughly $550 to $700 per month. A contract soldier, even at basic rank, can earn 3 to 4 times that amount plus bonuses. Defense factory workers often earn more still. The result was predictable. Police resigned. Early retirements surged. New recruits stopped applying. By November 2025, official Russian figures acknowledged around 172,000 vacant police positions nationwide. Independent analysts cited by Deutsche Welle warned the real number could be higher. In Moscow, the symbolic center of power, vacancy rates in some districts approach 70 to 75%. This mattered because Russia's internal model depends on saturation policing. Presence, speed, immediate response. When that presence fades, the system loses credibility fast. At the same time, the Kremlin made a critical decision. To sustain the war, prisons were emptied selectively. First through private military formations, then through defense ministry units. By mid-2024, estimates cited by Defense News and European security researchers suggested up to 180,000 inmates had been recruited for frontline service under various programs. Those who returned came back changed. Some carried medals, some carried trauma. Many returned to regions already stripped of police capacity. Historically, Russia has faced this pattern before. After World War II, after Afghanistan, after Chechnya. Each time, veterans returned faster than institutions could absorb them. Crime spiked, trust fell, order frayed. What makes this moment different is scale and timing. This is happening while the war is still ongoing, while resources are still flowing outward, and while the state's priority is no longer public safety, but regime security. That contrast defines everything that follows. The warning signs did not arrive all at once. They came in layers, each more serious than the last. After the Komi Training Center incident, internal investigations quietly expanded. Commanders were reassigned. One instructor was placed under house arrest, facing up to 10 years under Russian law for abuse of authority. But the most revealing revealing moment came in court. The defense did not focus on procedure or safety. It focused on medals, on battlefield service, on loyalty. War credentials were presented as a shield. That logic spread far beyond Comey. In Russia's Far East, families of servicemen began speaking out. In Primorye, reports collected by independent journalists and later echoed by regional outlets described barracks run like criminal rackets, salaries withheld, informal payments demanded, refusal met with extreme punishment. The military chain of command blurred into organized coercion. At the same time, crime statistics began to climb. According to data cited by Ukraine's Center for Countering Disinformation and echoed by regional Russian crime reports, more than 627,000 serious criminal cases were recorded across Russia in 2025. That was the highest figure in roughly 15 years. Weapons played a central role. The FSB announced it dismantled 157 arms smuggling networks in just 2 months during early 2025. The origin of those weapons was not disputed. They came from the front: rifles, explosives, ammunition, all moving back into civilian space. Then came the first shock in Moscow. On December 24th, in the south of the capital, a police vehicle was destroyed by an explosive device. The attack was precise. It was public. It sent a signal. Days later, another incident followed. On Yasinovaya Street, during morning traffic, an improvised explosive device targeted a senior military officer's vehicle. The blast shattered glass and security assumptions alike. Russian media confirmed the use of a remotely triggered device placed beneath the chassis. Investigators spoke of professional execution, not random violence. A message. That message grew louder. Over the following months, multiple senior figures linked to the military and security services were attacked in and around Moscow, near residential buildings, on morning commutes, in places once considered secure. Each incident reinforced the same conclusion: the capital was no longer sealed. In St. Petersburg, another line was crossed. Criminal groups wearing police uniforms abducted and robbed civilians. The impersonation worked because real police were scarce. The uniform itself had become a tool of crime. This was the third twist. Not chaos alone, substitution. Where the state withdrew, criminal structures stepped in. They filled gaps, controlled territory, collected payments, enforced their own rules. And all of it unfolded while official media continued to speak of stability. The strategic impact of this breakdown goes far beyond street crime. It strikes at the foundations of Russia's economy, military readiness, and social cohesion. Start with manpower. Law enforcement is not just about patrols. It underpins tax collection, contract enforcement, logistics security, and industrial discipline. With more than 172,000 police positions unfilled by late 2025, entire regions are operating without effective state oversight. According to analysis cited by Deutsche Welle, some rural districts now rely on response times measured in hours, not minutes. This has direct economic consequences. Small businesses face higher protection costs. Transport routes see increased theft. Insurance premiums rise. Informal payments return. Reuters reported in mid-2025 that internal security risks were now being factored into investment decisions, even for domestic Russian firms. Capital does not like uncertainty. It flees it. The military feels the strain as well. Discipline at the rear supports discipline at the front. When soldiers see commanders extracting payments or hiding behind war credentials to avoid accountability, cohesion weakens. Jane's Defense Weekly has repeatedly warned that morale erosion inside support structures can translate into battlefield risk within months. Numbers tell part of the story. Russia's defense spending exceeded $120 billion in 2025, according to public budget data analyzed by the BBC. At the same time, internal security budgets failed to keep pace with inflation. Police wages lagged consumer prices by double digits in real terms over 3 years. The imbalance was structural. Then there is the social cost. According to regional health and interior data cited by Reuters, tens of thousands of returnees from combat zones require psychological support. Systems to provide it are minimal. Oversight is weaker still. When trauma meets easy access to weapons and a shrinking police presence, volatility rises. The Kremlin's response has been selective. Resources flow toward riot units, surveillance technology, and political policing. Anti-war demonstrations are dispersed within minutes. Online dissent is tracked aggressively, but everyday security remains under-resourced. Defense News summarized the shift bluntly in late 2025. Russia's internal security apparatus is now optimized for regime protection, not public protection. That choice carries risk. History shows that when states prioritize guarding power over guarding people, legitimacy erodes. Trust collapses. Informal systems replace formal ones. This is not theoretical, it is measurable. Crime rates up, vacancies unfilled, response times stretched, weapon seizures climbing, and behind it all, a war economy draining talent from civilian life. The system is still functioning, but it is functioning under strain, and strained systems fail unpredictably. The consequences of Russia's internal security erosion are no longer confined within its borders. They are now a variable in global strategic calculations. For NATO planners, the situation presents a paradox. On one hand, Russia still fields one of the world's largest military inventories, thousands of armored vehicles, hundreds of aircraft, a nuclear arsenal measured in the thousands. On the other hand, internal instability weakens the system that sustains those forces: logistics, training, rear area security. Defense analysts cited by Reuters and NATO briefings through late 2025 highlight the same concern. A state struggling to control its own streets must divert elite units inward. National Guard formations rotate back from external tasks. Intelligence resources focus on domestic threats. Every battalion guarding Moscow is one less reinforcing the front. The European Union watches this closely. Cross-border crime risks rise when weapons leak and oversight collapses. Baltic and Nordic security services have already reported increased seizures of illicit arms traced to eastern routes, according to BBC investigations in 2025. Organized networks adapt quickly, states move slowly. China views the situation through a different lens. Beijing values stability above all. Russia's reliability as a long-term strategic partner depends on internal control. Analysts quoted by Deutsche Welle note that prolonged disorder inside Russia complicates energy transport, infrastructure investment, and Arctic cooperation. A weakened partner is harder to plan around. The United States, under President Donald Trump, faces a complex equation. Washington benefits strategically from a Russia distracted internally, but uncontrolled fragmentation carries risks. Unmonitored weapons flows, refugee pressure, unpredictable escalation pathways. Pentagon assessments cited by Defense News in late 2025 stress that internal collapse scenarios demand contingency planning, not celebration. The Middle East is also watching. Iranian leadership, already under pressure at home, studies how quickly internal security breakdowns can spiral. The lesson is not ideological, it is structural. Control depends on paying enforcers, maintaining legitimacy, and balancing force with welfare. Military doctrine comparisons underline the shift. Ukraine and its partners increasingly rely on low-cost systems. Drones priced under $5,000 disabling equipment worth millions. Russia's internal disorder mirrors that logic: cheap disruptions, high strategic cost. Looking ahead 3 to 6 months, analysts outline 3 broad scenarios. First, intensified repression. More resources pulled inward, harsher controls. Temporary order at high economic cost. Second, managed decay. Crime contained unevenly, regional disparities widen. Third, cascading instability. Local power brokers fill gaps, central authority stretches thinner. None of these paths lead back to the pre-2022 status quo. The global system feels the tremors already. Energy markets price uncertainty. Security alliances adjust. Intelligence agencies reassess assumptions once taken for granted. Russia's internal security crisis has become a geopolitical variable, and the world is recalculating around it. What began as a single explosion inside a provincial training hall has revealed something far larger. Russia is no longer struggling only on distant battlefields. It is struggling to hold its own center together. The facts are stark. More than 172,000 police positions remain unfilled. Crime levels have reached highs not seen in 15 years. Weapons are flowing back from the front into civilian space. Senior security figures have been targeted in the capital, and the state's response has been uneven, focused more on silencing dissent than restoring everyday safety. The Kremlin still controls the narrative. State television speaks of resilience and momentum. Official briefings highlight external threats. But daily reality tells a different story. Response times stretch, uniforms lose authority, trust erodes quietly, one neighborhood at a time. This is the core shock. Russia did not lose control overnight. Control leaked away through incentives, neglect, and misaligned priorities. Police pay lagged, standards dropped, veterans returned faster than institutions adapted. The war absorbed resources meant for stability at home. History offers warnings. Powerful states rarely fracture from a single external blow. They weaken when internal systems no longer support the weight placed upon them, when security protects power, not people, when legitimacy fades faster than fear can replace it. The next months matter. Will the Kremlin redirect resources to rebuild policing and public safety? Or will repression deepen while everyday order continues to slip? Can a war economy sustain both an external campaign and internal control at the same time? And perhaps the most important question remains unanswered. If a state built on security can no longer guarantee security, what replaces it? These are not abstract issues. They shape military outcomes, economic confidence, regional stability, global risk. If you want to understand where this is heading, watch what happens not at the front, but in the streets. Watch police recruitment numbers. Watch response times. Watch where resources flow, because that is where the real balance of power is being tested now. Share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for continued analysis on global security and geopolitics.